The cart was gone, not borrowed, not misplaced, vanished, as if it had sprouted wheels and driven itself into the Bermuda Triangle. I knew exactly who took it. Karen, the self-appointed new ruler of the HOA, had finally outdone herself. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that the cart she just swiped wasn't your typical Sunday gardener's utility vehicle. No. This one had been engineered like a NASA rover. Solar panels, encrypted GPS, motion-activated cameras, and my personal favorite, a remote kill switch that could stop it mid-roll like a bad soap opera scene. I didn't just build that cart, I became that cart. And Karen, she had just declared war. It all started 2 months ago when Karen managed to get herself elected as the new head of the HOA after the previous president retired and moved to Florida. At first, I didn't care about HOA drama. Lawn complaints, mailbox colors, someone's pet rabbit allegedly looking too wild. But Karen was different. She came in with aviator sunglasses, a clipboard, and the kind of confidence usually reserved for Bond villains and failed Broadway actors. Her first act? A 3-page memo banning unsightly carts, rogue wheelbarrows, and visually chaotic yard equipment. My cart, affectionately named Beastie, checked all those boxes in Karen's mind. Never mind that it was custom-built, meticulously maintained, and actually used for volunteering during community cleanup days. Karen hated it on sight. I tried to keep my distance. You can't reason with someone who holds a tape measure like it's a weapon. I had bigger things to worry about: landscaping jobs, clients, and keeping my grandfather's old property in shape. That cart wasn't just a tool, it was the heart of my business. It carried tools, irrigation parts, and sometimes, on hot days, a cooler full of Gatorade for elderly neighbors who couldn't handle the heat. Beastie had character, it had a soul, and Karen, she wanted it gone. Then came the Friday morning. I found my garage wide open, and Beastie nowhere to be seen. At first, I thought I had forgotten to lock up, but there were no signs of a break-in, no scratches, no tire marks, just an empty space and a chill that went straight down my spine. That's when I checked my app. The custom app I'd coded myself to track the cart's location. There it was, parked right in the middle of the HOA Central Park Pavilion. I blinked, refreshed the map, and it was still there. Karen had actually taken my cart and rolled it to a restricted HOO-only event she was hosting. She didn't ask for permission, didn't notify me, she just straight up commandeered it, like a golf cart pirate. I drove down to the pavilion in my truck, trying to keep my cool. Sure enough, there she was, standing beside Beastie, like it was her personal chariot. The HOA board was gathered around drinking lemonade and nodding approvingly at how environmentally forward her new transportation was. I stepped out and watched Karen's face harden like drying cement. "Oh, I didn't think you were using it," she said sweetly, as if she hadn't crossed about 10 different legal lines. "We needed a vehicle for transporting event supplies. You should really consider registering it with the HOA. It's technically unapproved equipment." I didn't blow up. I didn't argue. I smiled, nodded, and walked away, because the truth was Karen had just made her biggest mistake. Not only had she underestimated how attached I was to that cart, she had no idea what it was capable of. Beastie wasn't just a tool, it was a trap. And Karen, she had just walked right into it. Back home, I sat in front of my laptop, brought up the dashboard, checked the live GPS, and activated the microphone. Oh, very checked. Apparently, Karen had been using the cart like a gossip booth. In just the last 30 minutes, I had her recorded saying the HOA board members were dim-witted leeches, calling one resident's baby a future delinquent, and joking about raising HOA fees just to teach the neighborhood some discipline. This was just from the first 30 minutes. I leaned back and let out a low whistle. Karen wasn't just on a power trip. She was on a kamikaze run. The thing was, I wasn't out for revenge, not exactly. I just wanted to teach her that actions have consequences, especially when you steal from someone who is 10 times more technologically prepared than your HOA rulebook ever dreamed. So I pulled up the control panel and activated turtle mode. It was a setting I'd added for fun, limiting the cart to 2 meters per hour and making it beep like a 1997 Tamagotchi every 15 seconds. I imagined Karen's face when Beastie sputtered around her event like it had aged 100 years overnight. And that was just the beginning. I wasn't just going to get my cart back. I was going to make sure everyone in the HOA knew exactly who Karen was and what she had done quietly, methodically, with just the right amount of public spectacle, because if you're going to play games with someone's livelihood, you better be ready for the moment they decide to play back. By nightfall, I'd compiled an entire folder labeled Karen vs. Beastie, the unauthorized saga. Video clips, audio highlights, GPS breadcrumbs, and I was just getting warmed up. I scheduled a few anonymous posts to the neighborhood forum, gave the folder a nice juicy title, and waited. The kill switch wasn't just about stopping the cart. It was about starting something far more entertaining. Karen thought she could get away with taking something that didn't belong to her. She thought the HOA protected her. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that she just picked a fight with the one neighbor who turned his cart into a rolling fortress of data, dignity, and digital revenge. And I was just getting started. The next morning, I woke up to a group chat explosion. A few neighbors were sending screenshots, blurry photos, and laughing emojis. Karen's grand HOA event had not gone as planned. Apparently, during the group toast at the neighborhood renewal pavilion, her majestic ride, my cart, had sputtered to a crawl in front of everyone and let out a high-pitched squeal every 15 seconds. She tried to brush it off as eco mode to show off its efficiency, but the cart's top speed barely outran a turtle with arthritis. Residents were giggling, kids were pointing, and someone even tied a balloon to the back that said, "Just cursed." Karen had to abandon the cart mid-event and called 2 maintenance guys to push it to the side. Watching it all unfold on video, I could barely contain my laughter. That was phase 1. Public humiliation, mild edition. Now it was time for phase 2. Karen still hadn't returned the cart. It was currently parked in her driveway, not her garage, her driveway. Either she didn't want it near her house after the slow motion debacle, or she thought it looked better as HOA proper lawn art. Either way, I saw an opportunity. The cart had a few other features I hadn't yet revealed, including an audio loop system and a remote speaker function. I had once used it for Halloween to scare trick-or-treaters with ghost noises. By noon, I uploaded a short sound file I had edited myself, a robotic voice that played every 15 minutes through the cart's built-in speaker. Please return stolen property to its rightful owner. Property theft is not covered by HOA privileges. I set it to a low volume at first, subtle enough to confuse but loud enough to catch attention. According to my neighbor 3 houses down, Karen stood outside for 10 straight minutes, staring at the cart like it was possessed. Then she threw a towel over the seat, slapped the side of the console, and stomped off, muttering. I couldn't have scripted it better. But I wasn't done yet. Later that day, I activated the cart's microphone system to listen in. The audio wasn't crystal clear, but I caught enough to know Karen was fuming. I heard her on the phone with what sounded like a board member complaining that the cart was defective, haunted, and possibly intentionally designed to humiliate her. I almost dropped my coffee when I heard that last one. She wasn't entirely wrong. Still, something bugged me. She hadn't apologized. She hadn't returned the cart. She hadn't even addressed the fact that she took it without permission. That's when I got an idea. I wasn't just going to mess with her. I was going to turn the entire HOA against her. I compiled a short video using the audio I'd recorded earlier. Karen trash-talking board members, mocking elderly residents, and boasting that she'd do whatever she wanted because I practically am the HOA now. I combined it with some harmless but embarrassingly glitchy footage of her trying to ride the cart during its turtle mode malfunction. Then I uploaded it anonymously to the neighborhood message board under the title, Karen Chronicles, Episode 1, Queen of the HOA. Within hours, it had over 70 comments. People were tagging each other. Some asked if it was fake. Others recognized her voice. A few said, well, I always knew she was power tripping. Karen, of course, went ballistic. She started deleting comments. Then, after realizing she didn't have admin privileges for the whole board, sent out a community email with the subject line in all caps, fake videos, lies, and cyberbullying. The email was 4 paragraphs of unhinged rambling claiming she'd been hacked, defamed, targeted, and possibly framed by radical anti-AOA anarchists. She included a legal-sounding threat at the end that sounded like it was copied from a bad TV show. Further interference with official HOA business will be met with legal ramifications. I decided to give her a little break, just long enough for her to get comfortable. Then, one night, I kicked off phase 3. I texted my buddy Ricky, who owed me a favor, and had a... By the time the sun set, Karen's garage had become the stage for what could only be described as a spectacle. The cart, once stolen, now glowed like a radioactive party favor. According to neighbors, her scream was so loud it triggered 2 porch lights to flicker down the block. By morning, the cart had been wheeled into her garage, hidden again. But I had the footage. Ricky, with his camera on his vest, had captured it all, and I wasted no time uploading the video of the paint operation, complete with Karen's signature approval, to Karen Chronicles, Episode 2. The fallout was swift. The HOA called an emergency meeting, and Karen's inbox flooded with complaints. Someone even posted a meme of the cart glowing with the caption, Karen's HOA throne carriage. Just when I thought things had reached peak chaos, Karen made an unexpected move. She called the police. I was enjoying lunch when an officer knocked on my door. He was polite but clearly puzzled, holding a complaint form about tampering with private property. I smiled and calmly pulled out the original title, license and registration for the cart, all in my name. Then I showed him the GPS logs, footage of Karen taking the cart, and emails where she admitted to using it for an HOA event without my permission. The officer scratched his head, muttered about wasting department time, and left. Karen had tried to report me for interfering with my own property. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her grip on the HOA was slipping, and her carefully crafted image of a neighborhood savior had been reduced to a punchline. But she wasn't done yet. That evening, I noticed something strange as I saw her car leave the neighborhood. Her passenger seat was piled high with folders and what appeared to be legal books. Karen wasn't backing down. She was preparing for war. But what she didn't realize was that I wasn't finished either. This wasn't just about a cart anymore. It was about principle. And Karen was about to find out how dangerous it is to underestimate someone who has built their own battleground. For 3 full days, Karen was silent. No public emails, no surprise HOA inspections, no passive-aggressive flyers about unauthorized driveway decor. It was the longest silence the neighborhood had experienced since she took office, and while it was oddly beautiful, it was also suspicious. I knew better than to think she was retreating. Karen didn't disappear. She regrouped. Sure enough, by Thursday morning, a new notice appeared on the HOA bulletin board and was emailed to all residents. The subject line read, "Emergency board meeting regarding misconduct, vandalism, and neighborhood safety. Fine print revealed the motion, discipline, and potential expulsion of residents for hostile and deceptive behavior." Translation, she was coming for me. I showed up to the meeting in jeans, a lawn care hoodie, and a grin. Karen, on the other hand, arrived in full military-grade HOA regalia. Clipboard heels, perfectly ironed blazer, and a smug expression. She thought she had this in the bag. The community center was packed. Word had clearly spread that things were about to get dramatic. Some folks even brought popcorn. I saw at least 3 teenagers live streaming it like it was an episode of some trashy reality show. And honestly, it kind of was. Karen wasted no time launching into a full-on speech about malicious conduct, cyber intrusion, and the desecration of HOA equipment. She waved papers in the air, pointing fingers, and dramatically referred to the viral videos as digitally manipulated propaganda designed to undermine neighborhood unity. Her voice quivered with righteous indignation, which would have been impressive if it weren't so completely delusional. Then she called for a vote to censure me, an official reprimand that, if passed, could strip me of voting rights, bar me from meetings, and possibly expel me from the HOA altogether. Her allies, 2 board members she'd groomed since day one, nodded along. But what Karen didn't know, what she had absolutely failed to account for, was that one of the other board members was my silent ally, Mrs. Green, an 82-year-old retired systems analyst who had lived in the neighborhood longer than anyone. Mrs. Green knew exactly who Karen was, beneath the polished HOA persona. When it came time for the board to speak, Karen turned toward the room with her usual fake smile, expecting a wave of support. But then Mrs. Green cleared her throat and said loud and clear, "Before we vote on anything, I think the community deserves to hear the rest of the footage." The unedited clips. She turned toward me and gave me the faintest nod. Without hesitation, I walked to the front, plugged my laptop into the projector, and played the full audio recordings from the cart recordings where Karen laughed about raising fees just to teach the peasants some discipline, called the neighborhood watch twitchy dog walkers with delusions of power, and admitted she took the cart because it wasn't locked. So that's basically free game. The room went dead silent. Then came murmurs, followed by snorts of laughter, and finally, a wave of disbelieving gasps. Karen stood frozen, her mouth slightly open, her hands tightening around her clipboard like she might try to strangle it. I ended the presentation with a screenshot of the cart's registration, my name, my contact, my photo. "Any questions?" I asked, turning back to the board. Mrs. Green looked delighted. The vote flipped before Karen could launch into another monologue. Instead of censuring me, the board voted to officially open an ethics investigation into Karen's conduct as HOA president. Karen objected, ranted, threatened lawsuits, and even claimed I had hired voice actors to impersonate her. But it was over. Her grip was slipping fast, and the crowd knew it. A neighbor I barely knew walked up to me afterward and whispered, "I've hated her since she made us replant our rose bushes because they were too red." But Karen still wasn't finished. The next day, she tried to hack the cart. I got the alert at 2:14 a.m. Unauthorized connection attempt detected. It wasn't subtle. Whoever she hired, or maybe whatever half-talented cousin she roped into this, tried to wire into the cart's internal system, attempting to override the remote commands and GPS tracking. What they didn't know was that I had coded in a failsafe. If someone tried to access the root files without the encryption key, the cart would auto-signal a defense protocol. All control systems would go into lockdown and the wheels would spin in place. So at 2:17 a.m., just 3 minutes after the hack attempt, Beastie started doing donuts in Karen's garage. Well, not exactly donuts. It was more like slow, erratic spirals since the cart wasn't built for speed. But the effect was the same. She woke up to the sound of screeching tires and a robotic voice announcing, "Unauthorized intrusion detected," in increasingly dramatic tones. According to a neighbor who lived across the street, Karen came out screaming in a robe and flip-flops, swinging a broom like she was fighting off a raccoon. The security footage I managed to retrieve from my remote access system was comedy gold. The next morning, Karen tried once again to spin the narrative. She sent a long, wild email to the board claiming someone had sabotaged her garage, alleging that I had weaponized a personal vehicle and was endangering lives. But this time, no one bit. The board demanded she return the card immediately and suggested a formal hearing. That was when the real panic set in. Karen did something then that no one expected. She called her cousin, a supposed attorney, and tried to file a civil lawsuit against me for defamation, emotional distress, loss of professional reputation, and my personal favorite, theft of community joy. That last one might have been made up on the spot, but it was listed in all seriousness on the complaint. I wasn't worried. I had every log, every recording, and a printed manual of HOA bylaws that made her look like a walking violation. Still, the fact that she was willing to take it this far told me something. Karen wasn't fighting for power anymore. She was fighting to save face. And the more she flailed, the more ridiculous she looked. By the time the local news got wind of it, it was already spiraling into absurdity. Cart wars. HOA president accused of high-tech vehicle was the headline of the article my neighbor forwarded to me. A tiny photo of Beastie, still glowing faintly from the glitter paint, sat beneath Karen's disgruntled mugshot. Well, not a real mugshot, but a photo of her mid-yell at the town hall meeting. The article was surprisingly fair. They didn't call me a vigilante or a hacker. They referred to me as a technologically adept landscaper caught in an escalating HOA controversy. I liked that. It had flair. As for Karen, her war wasn't over, not yet, but it was clear the tide had turned. The community no longer saw her as a leader. They saw her for what she truly was, an entitled, petty, overreaching mess who got drunk on power and stole the wrong cart. And I was just getting started on the final act. Because if she wanted this to end in a courtroom, then fine. I'd bring the popcorn and the kill switch. At this point, the HOA had officially turned into a reality show. People weren't even pretending to care about landscaping policies or parking violations anymore. All eyes were on the Karen saga, which now involved legal threats, rogue cart activity, and enough neighborhood drama to fuel 3 seasons of television. But something else was shifting, something Karen hadn't accounted for. The neighborhood was waking up, and when neighbors wake up angry, things move fast. It started with the petition. I didn't launch it, Mrs. Green did. She posted it to the neighborhood forum under the title Time for Change, Remove Karen from HOA Leadership. At first, I thought it would be a quiet protest, maybe a few signatures from people tired of Karen's antics. By noon, it had over 100. People were sharing stories I'd never heard, how Karen fined a family for having sidewalk chalk art, berated a teenager for parking his bike too close to the decorative mulch, forced an elderly couple to repaint their mailbox because the color was too depressing. It was like a collective therapy session. Everyone had a Karen story, and now they were telling them. What made it even more beautiful was that it wasn't just digital noise. The residents took it offline. Flyers started popping up on telephone poles and community boards. Someone even printed a banner and hung it from their second-floor balcony that read, "And no more Karen! Return the cart." The movement was born, and with it, something unexpected, a sense of unity. Neighbors who had long been scattered and disjointed began gathering in front yards and meeting in cul-de-sacs, reconnecting over a shared frustration. A common annoyance had somehow bonded the entire community. It was like the neighborhood barbecue 10 years ago, where someone accidentally grilled tofu instead of hamburgers, sparking a philosophical debate on the very meaning of meat. But Karen, of course, was furious. She tried calling everyone who had signed the petition, demanding explanations, attempting to guilt-trip them, and even threatening consequences to scare them into withdrawing their names. But it backfired. 2 residents recorded her calls and posted them online. In one, she threatened to revoke trash privileges. In another, she suggested that someone's dog might not be properly licensed and hinted at fines. It was like she couldn't help herself. Every time she attempted to regain control, she exposed just how unfit she was to lead. The board had no choice but to act. They called for a formal HOA town hall meeting with one purpose: to vote on a no-confident motion. If it passed, Karen would be removed immediately from her role. She could still live in the neighborhood, but her power would be gone. No more fines, no more rules, no more HOA emails written like war declarations. Naturally, she wasn't going to go down without a fight. The meeting was scheduled for Saturday night and was standing room only. Families arrived with lawn chairs, kids holding signs as if it were a sports rally. Someone even brought snacks, bags of kettle corn labeled popcorn for the power trip. I showed up too with Beastie, freshly repaired, waxed, and loaded. With one final surprise, I parked it right outside the community center where everyone could see it, a silent reminder of how this all started. Karen entered the meeting like she was marching into battle. Dressed in a red power suit, carrying a binder thicker than a tax code, she looked ready to bulldoze anyone who stood in her way. Her cousin, the so-called lawyer, stood beside her, visibly nervous and completely unprepared for the chaos that was about to unfold. She began with a speech, of course, 10 minutes of excuses, finger-pointing, and conspiracy theories. She claimed I had weaponized technology to stage a neighborhood coup, even going so far as to say the petition was fake and signed by bots. When a resident stood up and said, "Karen, my name is Janet, and I'm very much not a bot," half the room erupted in laughter. Then it was my turn. I didn't prepare a speech. I didn't need one. I simply wheeled in a portable speaker, connected it to Beastie's feed, and played one final audio clip. It was short, just 20 seconds long, but it hit hard. In Karen's own voice, she was heard bragging to one of her allies, "If they're too lazy or dumb to fight back, they deserve to be ruled. I'm not running an HOA, I'm running a kingdom." The silence that followed was deafening. No one moved, no one even coughed. Even her cousin shifted away slightly, like he was afraid the floor might swallow them both. Karen tried to speak, but the board shut her down. The vote was called. It wasn't even close. 4 in favor, 1 abstaining, and 0 opposed. Karen was removed from her position as HOA president, effective immediately. Her face drained of color. Her lips pressed so tightly that they disappeared. She stood up, trembling with rage, and shouted, "This isn't over. You'll regret this, every one of you." Then she stormed out, leaving behind her binder, her cousin, and her crumbling legacy. The room erupted in applause. But even as the dust settled, I knew Karen wasn't done. She'd lost her title, but not her pride. And pride, as we all know, makes people do stupid things. That night, around midnight, Beastie's GPS pinged again. The cart, which had been locked and parked in my garage, showed movement. At first, I thought it was a glitch, but then I saw the live feed. Someone had broken in. A shadowy figure in a hoodie had climbed into the garage and was now driving the cart down the street. I didn't panic. I didn't even get out of bed. I just reached over to my nightstand, picked up my phone, opened the app, and hit one button to kill switch. Beastie stopped dead at the end of the street. Its lights flashed, its horn honked 3 polite beeps, and then the seat ejected upward with a hiss of compressed air. It didn't launch anyone into the sky, but it was dramatic enough to knock the thief off balance, sending them sprawling to the ground. The camera zoomed in, and there she was. Karen, drenched in sweat, dirt on her blazer, her hair wild as if she had just survived a tornado of bad decisions. She looked up at the camera, her expression a perfect mix of disbelief and despair. I didn't call the cops. I didn't press charges. I didn't need to. By sunrise, the entire neighborhood had seen the footage and Karen was finished. Karen didn't show her face for 3 days after the cart incident. No emails, no flyers, no impromptu compliance visits to measure someone's garden gnome for height violations. Her cousin left town quietly, and her garage door stayed shut like a tomb. A few neighbors speculated that she might have moved out in the night, but I knew better. Karen wasn't the type to go quietly. She was the type to retreat, regroup, and come back louder, angrier, and somehow even more entitled. So I waited. And as much as I wanted the story to end with her humiliating fall in front of the whole neighborhood, I knew she wasn't done making noise just yet. Sure enough, on the 4th day, a letter arrived at my door. Not an email. This was a printed, hand-delivered letter on stiff, cream-colored stationery. She even embossed her initials at the top like she was writing from a castle. The letter accused me of harassment, intimidation, emotional manipulation, and psychological warfare via technologically weaponized landscaping equipment. It was 3 pages long, included 2 typos, and ended with a threat of legal action if I didn't immediately cease all surveillance, interference, and public displays of antagonistic performance art. Performance art? That's what she called the glitter paint, the kill switch, and the video that played at the town hall. I almost wanted to thank her for the compliment, but I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Something had shifted in the neighborhood since Karen's fall from power. People had woken up. They had found their voices, and without Karen's iron grip on the HOA steering wheel, they were steering things their way. A new interim board was voted in by a landslide. Mrs. Green naturally took the lead role. The first thing she did was repeal 5 of Karen's most ridiculous regulations, including one about wheelbarrow sizes and a ban on decorative flags during non-federal holidays. She even scheduled a community cleanup and invited me to be the guest speaker on innovative landscaping tools and neighborhood unity. I accepted, of course, and I brought Beastie with me. The day of the cleanup, the air was light. You could feel the difference. Laughter replaced tension. Kids ran around with trash grabbers. Teens painted fences. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years were handing out lemonade and swapping plant cuttings. I gave a short speech, nothing dramatic, just a thank you for the support and a little encouragement about how we could all look out for each other without turning into petty tyrants. People clapped. Someone shouted, "No more Karens." And Beastie beeped right on cue, like it knew its part in the story. That should have been the end of it, but as the sun began to dip and the event wound down, I got an alert from the app. Motion detected. Beastie's camera had picked up a figure walking toward it from across the street. Fast, deliberate, and holding something shiny. I recognized her immediately. Karen had come back not to apologize, not to speak, but to vandalize the one thing that had become her symbol of defeat. She had a can of spray paint in one hand and what looked like a screwdriver in the other. She must have thought the cart was off, unguarded, maybe even unprotected, now that she'd been dethroned. She was wrong. I activated the kill switch again, but this time I also turned on a new feature I had added just 2 nights earlier. A holographic display on the dashboard. It was a simple projector with a transparent screen, but it lit up just as Karen raised the can, and there, projected on the screen, was her face. Frozen mid-scream from the last security footage with the words, "Smile, you're alive," blinking underneath. Karen froze. You could see her mind trying to decide whether to run, scream, or keep going. She chose wrong. She lunged for the cart anyway, and just as she made contact, the speakers chirped out a new audio message I had recorded. "This vehicle is protected by petty-proof technology. Step away or risk maximum embarrassment." She dropped the screwdriver, then the can, and turned away, walking off like a ghost in broad daylight. Her spine stiff as a board, her pace somewhere between retreat and a forced strut. She didn't look at anyone. She didn't say a word, but she didn't need to. Half the neighborhood had seen it. One kid even got it on video. The next day, her house went up for sale. The listing was online by noon. No showings allowed. As is condition, priced for a quick sale. 2 days later, a moving truck pulled into her driveway. She didn't pack much, just the essentials plus a stack of legal files and a box of leftover HOA trophies. I didn't speak to her. She didn't look my way. But as the truck pulled out of the neighborhood, someone had taped a sign to the back bumper that read, "Watch for carts." Karen was gone, and it was surreal how quickly peace returned. Without her constant surveillance, people stopped worrying about the color of their flower pots or how many guests they had over. The HOA became what it should have been, a resource, not a regime. Beastie became a local mascot. Kids asked to take turns riding in it during events. I even added a barbecue tray to the back and started hosting block cookouts. The first one drew more than 50 people. One neighbor brought homemade ribs. Another brought speakers and played 80s hits. Someone joked that I should run for HOA president. I politely declined, but I did keep one tradition alive. Every now and then, usually when the neighborhood needed a good laugh, I'd plug into the cart's projector and play a short highlight reel. Nothing cruel, just the classic Karen's failed escape on the kill switch cart, her speech meltdown at the town hall, and the hologram moment with the blinking caption. People cheered every time, not because they hated her, but because it reminded them what happens when someone tries to rule with fear instead of respect. And maybe, just maybe, that was the best part. Karen thought she could take power and never let go. She thought she could bend a neighborhood to her will. But all it took was one cart, a little tech, and a whole lot of patience to show her that you can't control a community forever, not when they're paying attention, not when they've had enough. Karen may have taken my cart, but in the end, she gave me something far better, my neighborhood back. And the next time someone tries to mess with it, well, let's just say Beastie's got a few more tricks up its battery-powered sleeve.